Hey there, welcome to the GXM podcast, where we explore news and topics around video game music and the intersection between the games and music industries. We aim to publish fortnightly, so please be sure to subscribe, and more importantly than that, share it. Tell other people about it, share it around the industry, and let people know what we're doing here. Joining me, Tom Quillfeldt, is my co-host Mat Ombler. Matt is head of gaming partnerships at Laced. I am community manager and A&R at Laced as well. Matt, it's busy times for you. We should warn listeners that we're probably going to take something of a sort of month-long hiatus, maybe a little bit longer, so that you can displace your family to a new house, which is always stressful and always a lot to do, and obviously baby on the way. So how do you feel about, maybe we should chuck some of the interviews, older interviews in the feed, I reckon, without the news sections and stuff, just the main interviews.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout. I mean, to be fair, there's still quite a lot of interviews. We've got some really cool people coming on over the next couple of weeks/months. It's just a case of getting our schedules to line up with theirs, because like us, they are hilariously busy as well.
Yeah, life doesn't stop.
No, life does not stop when you're expecting a baby boy in 6 weeks, but also moving house in 1 week to a house which is literally like 3 times the size as well. So we've got all the furniture to sort, everything that comes with a new house move as well, and then just prepping up with work and stuff. It is absolute madness at the moment.
The nice bit is, though, when you move house, I mean, most of it's hell, but there is a nice moment as a gamer when you finally plug the TV in, you finally get the internet working, you finally plug your PS5 in, you finally get a nice comfy chair, and you finally just get to sit in a chair with a beer and start playing games in your new house. There's that moment to look forward to. And
doing that with a mate who works at Curry's, and also saying to him, right, sir, what have you got in clearance at the moment? Like, what's coming up on that system that is not customer facing? Sir, hoping we're going to get a nice big fat 65-inch Sony TV that's going to go up on the wall for like literally way cheaper than it should be.
Yeah, but you know what's going to be on it once you have a kid? It's just going to be 65 inches of Bluey over and over again.
Yeah. You know what? I'm getting a to-do list now of kids stuff, and it's like, yeah, we're obviously going to do the generic like kids TV shows and stuff, but as soon as that boy knows well, we are watching Pokemon from start to finish. Like that boy is going to grow up on Pokemon the same way I did, and I am so excited for that.
My boys get down before we're even awake, so they just choose to watch Pokemon or Sonic. Or I'm surprised there isn't a decent Mario cartoon out at the moment. They're kind of missing a trick, because it's like every other brand in the world has like a kids show, Star Wars and Spider-Man and even Alice in Wonderland. So yeah, I'm surprised there isn't a Super Mario kids show, but yeah, they love it. Pokemon still holds up.
There was an animated Mortal Kombat TV series, and there was an animated Donkey Kong series.
Donkey Kong makes perfect sense, actually.
They were really good. Like it was like proper like young kids kind of stuff, but the Mortal Kombat one was sick. Like genuinely, it was really good. I'm going to have to re-download those.
Nice. Well, I hope it all goes well. Shall we get on with the news?
Yes.
So Matt, first up, so this story in your last newsletter really caught my eye, and I guess it's because Charlie XCX is a pop star I've been tracking for like decades. Like, I really liked her work from when she was first around. But she, in 2024, she is having the mother of all kind of album campaigns this year. She has basically branded the whole of summer.
Brat Summer.
You know, it's influenced the American presidential campaign. She's never been bigger. She's having the most massive year, basically. And that makes perfect sense then that, you know, the likes of Fortnite, Roblox would want to get some kind of collaboration going. You were very, very impressed by this Roblox Charlie XCX collaboration. Is that right?
It's nice to see a music activation on Roblox that isn't naff, quite frankly. I feel like the past couple of episodes, whenever we've talked about a campaign on Roblox, it's normally just not very good from a music perspective. A lot of the music campaigns on Roblox tend to rely on like rhythm game mechanics. They'll force music stuff into games that aren't music. Whereas with this, it was an integration in a dress-up / like fashion game, which as a genre, those games have already been super popular. Like, sure, if you didn't play them, you probably still know about the likes of like Barbie Fashion House or Dreamhouse or whatever in the 90s on like PC and stuff like that. Like, there's always been a massive audience for those sort of games, and Dress to Impress, which is the game that collaborated with Charlie XCX, it is basically just that. Some quick numbers, because I think the numbers blew my mind more than the fact Charlie XCX was doing something on Roblox. This Dress to Impress game launched in October 2023, so it's not even been out a year, and it's had more than 2.1 billion visits. Billion, yeah, which is like absolutely wild. I normally say there's a caveat with visits because Roblox can track that. Like, you could literally just open the game and then close it, and that's a visit recorded, so it's easy to rack up a lot. But to counter that, there's an average of like 237,000 people playing like at the same time, concurrent user count, which is way more than like most of the most popular games on Steam and stuff like that. Like, I'm sure if you get up some big Steam games right now, I think you'd struggle to find a lot that have more than 230,000 concurrent users.
Black Myth Wukong has been the sort of buzzy game in the last week or so.
2 mil, I think.
Was that concurrent, though?
Yeah, I think so, but that's kind of like a anomaly because that's all Chinese players kind of thing, and then it dropped down to like as soon as China logs off basically in the time zone, it drops right down. To be fair, that this is just an average CCU as well. I think it actually peaked at like 550,000 or something.
In terms of like raw user kind of users at one time, it is standing alongside some of the biggest like Dota 2, PUBG, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the game is literally like you open it up, you're given a theme. So obviously for this collaboration, it was like Brat Summer, and you had to accessorize your character in like the same style as like Charlie XCX and Brat Summer. The gameplay mechanics, that's like all you do. And there was a load of accessories obviously themed on Charlie XCX that were put into the game and stuff like that. But just nice to see a collaboration that was a good fit, not just because it's like a forced music thing in Roblox, because there's been, like you were saying, like this whole marketing campaign for a latest album has been absolutely wild, and I think style and fashion has been such an important part of that with this whole like Y2K aesthetic she's been going for. That's just the perfect match for a fashion game. So I think there's a lesson here for the music industry where if you've got the right artist and you're trying to do something in the gaming space, like, and they've got something going for them that isn't just music, play to that.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, not every music and gaming collaboration has to focus on music. Like, as weird as that might sound, like, it doesn't have to. Like, you can do other things. You can integrate your music IP into games that aren't music games as long as it makes sense. And this, like, it just makes sense.
And from Charlie XCX's perspective, with this collaboration, she wants to reach young girls, young women, and a fashion game that is incredibly popular on Roblox. It makes perfect sense. It makes much more sense. I mean, she may yet do something in Fortnite. It would be odd to see her turn up in PUBG, for instance, or Valorant or whatever, but this makes sense, a perfect sense, because it's, as you say, fashion that fits with what Charlie XCX has been doing for the last few months, absolutely slaying it and looking great in her videos and all of that. So
I think the biggest thing as well, I didn't even mention this real quickly, player counts for the game jumped by 12 million because of the collaboration. So sometimes with stuff like this, it can be hard to pinpoint like the impact on either the game that featured the collaboration or the artist that jumped into the collaboration. For this, there was a clear player spike. like when this collaboration starts. And yeah, an extra 12 million people started playing the game.
I mean, her streams are probably through the roof, so it might be difficult to see a sort of...
Yeah, I looked into that. I think she's literally like a top 10 artist at this point, I think. So when I looked in, I was like, even if there was a spike, it would be like the tiniest spike, just because of how many people listen to her already. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, really good collaboration. Everyone should look into it if you're looking for examples of like music and gaming done right. Shout out to Brat Summer. Keep it going.
Are you having a Brat Summer, Matt?
I mean, I'll be having a Brat Summer in 6 weeks, I guess, when little baby boy comes along. Yeah, Brat Autumn.
Lovely stuff. So Gamescom has been on in the last sort of few days. Depends when you hear this, I guess. It'll probably all be wrapped up by then. Lots of announcements have come and gone about games and composers. I cannot claim to have caught absolutely everything, unfortunately, but I just noticed that there was a sort of higher than normal volume of composers announcing things. So Christopher Tan is back to do the theme of Civilization 7. Famously, he won a Grammy for Baba Yetu, which was the theme song, I believe, for Civilization 4. And stood alone as a piece of music created for a video game, stood alone at the Grammys for a long time, apart from, I think, Austin Wintory's Journey got a nomination somewhere along the line. He's back. Akira Yamaoka, who is synonymous with the Silent Hill series, basically every game, every film, I think he's scored pretty much. He's been on top of all of it. He has, according to him, remade all the original tracks and added new ones for the Silent Hill 2 remake. And, I mean, Silent Hill 2 is one of the all-time great soundtracks, I would say. Silent Hill took kind of 2, 3, 4 very, very amazing soundtracks, basically. They've got the scraping, grinding, metallic clunk you associate with Pyramid Head and horror situations, but then they've got this incredibly grungy, groovy, late 90s kind of trip-hop aesthetic that people absolutely love and still love. And even before the Silent Hill series got this recent revival, just that vibe that he helped create on Silent Hill 2, 3, 4 kept fans going on Twitter round and round, posting different Silent Hill stuff and memes and it's lovely to see that he's back and that he's working on this one. Stephen Barton, recent Grammy winner, has been working on the Smite 2 Alpha and has a soundtrack album out. Austin Wintory released his fourth Counter-Strike Go music kit box. This one is a very weird album called The Devil Went Clubbing in Georgia. And Austin Wintory also announced that he was coming back for Monaco 2, which is, I think, one of his very earliest games. It's a stealth game, indie stealth game from a long, long time ago. So, like other games like World of Goo, that's just had World of Goo 2 recently, these kind of very, very old indie games, indie IP are coming back.
And I think real quickly as well, just on the music kit box, for anyone listening, if you're not aware of that, if you don't play Counter-Strike Go, these music kit boxes in Counter-Strike essentially replace stems or music cues in the game with new music, whatever is in that music kit box. So with Counter-Strike, when you start up a game, you've got a little song that plays at the beginning of the match, capture the flag, there'll be like a little stinger that plays for like 2 or 3 seconds. Same with when you plant a bomb and stuff like that. So that just swaps that out for new music. And genuinely, like I am really surprised that COD, Battlefield, and these other games, like I'm surprised this hasn't been in any other games yet, because having seen it in action, I think it's just a super interesting way of deploying music in a game, especially because there were like loads of like licensed music kits as well, with like a lot of pop punk albums and metal albums as well as in Counter-Strike, where you can swap that music out. I just think it's super interesting. More people need to be doing it.
Jason Graves is once more working on the Dark Pictures anthology games. That is super massive. Their latest title is called Directive 8020, and they've got a big name actor to helm that. It's looking good. Hitoshi Sakimoto of Final Fantasy Tactics fame is announced to be composing the soundtrack for a Wizardry title. Now, to be fair, this is a free-to-play mobile title called Wizardry Variant Daphne. Olivier de Rivière is working on the latest, I call it DL sequel, Matt, which is where it's Dying Light the Beast. It's where a game has started life as a DLC for, in this case, Dying Light 2, and then they've just sort of thought that, well, this is too big for a DLC, and we're probably going to make more money if it's a standalone game. It might be a new entry point for players who didn't want to jump into the series so far. So Olivier's working on that, as well as I think he's still working on South of Midnight and various other things. He's a very busy man, so good for him. Matt, tell me about HoloLive.
I have been banging the drum for VTubers and just virtual artists in general, I think, over the past couple of episodes. So for anyone who isn't aware, VTubers or virtual artists are essentially, like true to the name, an animated or fictional version of someone. So just like how streaming is really popular, you can get a lot of streamers who will kind of adopt like a character persona, or alternatively, you can get big brands and big companies creating their own virtual artists to kind of either front music groups or be brand ambassadors for their companies and stuff like that. So one of the biggest VTuber companies in the world is a company called HoloLive. There is a natural link there with gaming because a lot of their artists do streams and stuff on Twitch. They announced in their latest earnings report that there is a big focus on expanding into video games. Interesting, which is why I wanted to talk about this. Their plans are to basically expand its IP in the licensing business. So rather than just making more of a push on gaming at large, they want game studios to look at their artists who are on HoloLive and make games around them. That could be like rhythm games where all of the songs are all VTuber HoloLive songs. It could be like, I think I saw a puzzle game earlier when I looked at the Steam link from like Stu, because they've got their own Steam page with licensed games on there, and there's some really weird ones on there like card games and stuff like that. But I just think this is a really cool example of a music company that is obviously gaming adjacent, looking at licensing in a clever way while at the same time being mindful of like how they can use it to get further into gaming. I think we will see a really big game come out of this, just because some of HoloLive's like VTubers already are really, really massive. So if they can get the right developer on board to make the right licensed game, I wouldn't be surprised to see like a massive hit.
Okay, we've got a couple of quick news things. Matt, I noticed you picked up this story, not technically a video game story, but close enough, I think. Duolingo is an extremely popular educational app that gamifies language learning, and as well as French or Latin or German or whatever it is, you can learn. I think, can you do Klingon on it? You can do High Valyrian from Game of Thrones.
Can you really?
I think so, yeah. That's
mad.
So my wife has been literally hammering the Latin course, but then she ran out and she's really, really distraught. So then she switched to French, has been slightly less happy with that. Just the way that the game is structured these days, it's very kind of, daily chat, like pushing you to come back daily and not lose your streak. So it's a little bit of a pushy kind of app, I would say. The music course, I was led to believe, wasn't that great, or, hadn't been structured as comprehensively as the kind of core competency of Duolingo, which is, French, Italian, Spanish, that kind of thing, Chinese, Japanese. So they have done a very interesting deal with Sony Music, who's obviously one of the few major labels, to include over 60 pop songs as part of the music course curriculum. Now, I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work. I can kind of imagine how they would do it. They would use those songs as examples to teach you about rhythm and harmony and melody and that kind of thing. I know that Meghan Trainor is part of this, and some other pretty big artists. So, as I've said before, my wife does love Meghan Trainor, so she's obviously turning up in the right places, which is Candy Crush, which my wife loves, and now Duolingo. So it's like Meghan Trainor is like hunting my wife through artist collaborations.
That's mad.
Also, Hosier, Pharrell Williams are involved. So, big pop artists, sort of, accessible radio pop tunes to get people involved in the music learning. I might check this out, actually, to be honest. I mean, I'm not a beginner in music. I've been playing for many decades, and I think this is aimed at people who are just starting out, just learning the real basics. But maybe I'll check it out with one of my kids and get them to have a look in, and we'll see how those kind of pop songs work.
Do it and report back.
Indeed.
Speaking of pop songs, this was a weird one. Probably one of the weirdest video game music collaboration songs I've heard in a long time. We are just getting to the end. We have just wrapped the 2024 Esports World Cup, which took place in Saudi Arabia. Guess how long it went on for?
Gosh, if you're asking me, then it must be some weird, 2 months or something?
Yeah, it started 4th of July and it just finished 24th of August, which is absolutely wild. Obviously, at the very end, just recently, we've had all of the finals and stuff like that. There was a new trailer for the Tekken 8 finals featuring a new image song, which is basically what Japan calls arranged and remix songs, where they'll take melodies from the game and just arrange them. I don't know why they use the word image, it's interesting. But this song has been written by a Japanese supergroup called The Last Rockstars. The song hasn't been officially released yet. I'm not even sure it's got a name. I took a listen to it via the trailer, and it is eclectic.
Okay.
It's very on brand with kind of because let's be honest, I love the music in Tekken, but there are some songs that I listen to where I'm like, that's a bit of a jump from, do you know what I mean? The soundtracks are very diverse, and this is an amalgamation of all that diversity just pushed into one song. I think you will find it funny.
My head is sharp and clear, absolutely. Then you're inspired with an quiet running speed. This fight is tough and not complicated. The wind is blowing now, I don't succeed. You won't succeed in that way. You won't succeed.
Speaking of funny things, this surprised me. So people may be aware that Adele's son, and yes, this is 16 times Grammy Award winning singer Adele, her son is a massive fan of the survival game Rust, developed by Facepunch. He is so much of a fan that I think it was last year's Halloween, she made a Rust costume for him to go trick-or-treating in, which went viral on Twitter. But she recently accompanied her son on a studio visit to Facepunch HQ, just to say hey, just stopping by, just want to learn more about this game that my son is obsessed with. So yeah, just Facepunch's Twitter account just casually sharing a photo of their staff with Adele. Just hey, Adele came to visit today, which I just thought was absolutely wild.
It's not an association you would normally put together.
Nope, absolutely not.
But I think it's kind of nice though, isn't it? It humanises it, and yeah, the big artists of a certain generation, their kids are going to grow up in a world saturated with video games, and we're going to start seeing where we've had Rolling Stones in Roblox or something. It's going to make much more this makes much more sense that there would be some link between them, but just because of generationally how it splits out, you can understand maybe an artist, their children are interested in the game, and that's why certain collaborations happen, or just certain associations happen.
Yeah, I just love the idea of the entire studio being I mean, we could just ask her. We could just ask her to do a song. She does it, and then her son's just oh, Mum, why have you to do this thing?
Why
have you spoiled this thing I love? Oh, no, I'm not going to play this game anymore because your song plays every time I start it up. That'd be one hell of a collaboration, the Rust X Adele.
My guest for this week is Lacey Johnson of Lacey Johnson Music, the YouTube channel, incredibly successful YouTube channel. Lacey is a multi-instrumental musical human being and is on Twitch, on TikTok. She's got some incredible, like, high-energy music videos. She puts a ton of effort into it and is incredibly prolific as well. She's covered Persona. She loves to cover Guilty Gear Strive, Sonic Adventure, Final Fantasy, Devil May Cry, Mega Man, Sonic Frontiers, and on and on and on. She is all across it. Portal, there's just so much to her channel. You could really go in there and there's a lot to enjoy. She also dubs herself the Keytar Queen, and I can attest to that. She definitely has some skills to pay the bills. We chatted about her musical background, what brought her to YouTube and other platforms as a content creator, and kind of the vibes out there for content creators around video game music on YouTube, like how things are going. Are people getting found? Is it easy to promote things and get a channel established and all of that good stuff? I hope you enjoy it.
I face up, I hold up, I reach out to the truth of my life, seeking to seize on the whole moment. Now break away. Oh, but let me up. Can you let me up? Can you set me free from this dark and no world safe?
So Lacey, how did you come to video game music? And I'm going to take a wild stab that you were a musician first, or that music was an interest when you were younger, and video games were a hobby, and then at some point they intersected.
I've been a classical pianist since I was 9 years old. It was Final Fantasy X that really piqued my interest. I love video games since the early 90s. And Final Fantasy X had this piano-driven score that really kind of changed my perception on what the instrument that I was actively learning could do, and the emotions that it could make me feel, because I did classical because that's what you're supposed to do if you learn piano. I liked it. I liked how challenging it was, but the repertoire wasn't really resonating with me as a child, understandably. So to hear something so beautiful on an instrument that I was growing to appreciate and understand was such a big turning moment for me. And so I started to learn a lot of video game and anime repertoire just because that's what I was interested in addition to all of my classical work that I was doing. I went to school for music. I got a degree in music industry. So I got a full business degree as well as a music degree, and fell into VGM when I started my YouTube channel. And I started it to keep my recording skills from college honed and have a place to kind of make things and put them somewhere. And I always liked a visual medium because I've been on YouTube forever, just as a fan. But I used to make music videos with my friends in our backyards or around town and stuff, just as a hobby for fun. So creating a visual accompaniment to the work that I was making just made sense. And it was Super Mario Odyssey that changed a lot of stuff for me as far as a career goes, because I covered Jump Up Superstar, and that actually took off and went somewhere.
It's time to jump up in the air. Jump up, don't be scared. Jump up and your cares will soar away. And if the dark clouds start to swirl, don't fear, don't shed a tear, 'cause I'll be a one-up girl. So
After speaking with a couple other people in the business about kind of what I wanted to do with YouTube, they said, well, if you like video game music, you should just do that. And I went, okay. And that was it. So it was it was
simple.
Yeah, it was a really easy way to narrow my scope. And everyone kept saying, you need a niche, you need an entry point, you know? I've always loved games. I've always loved game music. So it just made sense. I always wanted to be in video games. So it all just kind of felt very organic and natural, you know, just continuing to hone my craft and improve my work. It is going somewhere. So yay, hard work pays off sometimes.
I mean, it sounds like you've done so much with music because, of course, if you were a trained pianist, that's very rote, that's very...
Oh, yeah.
Learn these scales and these contrapuntal things and do this theory and what's this, ear training and all of that. And then, learn these set pieces and you've got to get it absolutely down. And a lot of that time you memorize those pieces and they become part of your hands.
Yes.
And, years later, I find there's a Debussy arabesque. My hands just know the first page and a half.
Yep, I know that piece.
for the rest of my life, I will probably know that in my hands, like there's a musical brain in there somehow. But when you first heard, so To Zanarkand is the piece that opens Final Fantasy X, and it's by Nobuo Uematsu. Interestingly, the Piano Collections album for that was one of the few, I think, arranged by Masashi Hamauzu, who was one of the co-composers of Final Fantasy X. Did you get hold of that sheet music, or did you transcribe? Did you actually listen and work out To Zanarkand or any of the other pieces from Final Fantasy X by yourself?
So both. I have an incredible ear. That's my musical superpower. I definitely learn most of what I do by ear. But back in the day, I'm going to really date myself here. So ichigo.net was a fan site that existed for fan sheet music of transcriptions. And I still have this binder to this day. I printed out any and everything that they ever uploaded so that I could have some very wrong, but close enough versions of pieces that I really enjoyed. I did get a hold of the piano collections later. I have a couple of the books actually for Final Fantasy. Yeah, it was kind of a little bit of both, and it was a great way to appreciate, something I loved so much, because just hearing the harmony and working it out with my hands was such a great moment to appreciate how beautiful so many of those chords and structures were. But then to see it written out was like, oh, this is way better. Like this actually makes sense. I enjoyed that. Yeah.
It's so funny because if you see I've got a couple of Ben Folds piano books behind me, and I know they're wrong. Like I can hear that it's wrong, and I think there's something in that as when you're just practicing as a musician. Like if you go on like chord charts on the internet, are sort of notoriously kind of dodgy sometimes.
Oh yeah, they're suggestions.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think there's something valuable about knowing it's wrong and then working out what you think might be right. And even if you're somehow accidentally reharmonizing,
that's cool.
That's valuable as well, or if you want to take it down a key or whatever, that journey is what's important about kind of becoming interesting.
Well, because it's all about the connection.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a big thing, especially in the cover community. That's a very divisive topic, correct versus what someone may feel. And I make a lot of creative adjustments or changes or rewrite some passages just because it's, at the end of the day, it's me and my interpretation of what I'm working with. And that was something my professors and teachers hated because I would rewrite some things in pieces, which is very no. In classical, you don't do that. But it was more important to me to interpret and to feel the music and present it in a way that was authentic to me. And that's something I always have done since I was 12 years old, and I used to have my teachers roll their eyes at me to today. I mean, it's just like music is such a free thing, and there is no perfect anything because that takes away from what the art itself is about.
You have to be interpretive.
Yeah.
You just have to. And all of music history is interpretive. It's only when we get to the 20th century with kind of recorded music that there becomes like one official version, whereas prior to that, music was for entertainment in public spaces and would get rewritten. And like Shakespeare plays or whatever, there'd be different arrangements and tweaks, and the composer would go back to it a few years later, or they'd be performing it for the king, but they could only have a small ensemble in this church, so they'd have to like shrink it down or something.
We all make adjustments. It's beautiful. It's a good thing.
I used to play in a covers band, and that was the best bit. And medleys, and oh god, some of the medleys are terrible. But that's the fun bit. That's the fun bit. Because if you're just trying to copy the record, like the Eagles on tour famously is sort of so accurate that people got fed up paying $90 to see them again because there was just no interpretation or improv at all. So there's several different fascinating bits about what you do. For me personally, I think for an audience who try and understand that there are these different areas of video game music outside the video games themselves. But one of those things is fascinating is YouTube, because YouTube is the second, I think, largest search engine in the world,
Yep.
Only to Google, which owns YouTube.
Right.
Roughly, what's the layout for cover artists on YouTube at the moment? Are things getting better? Are things getting slightly worse? Is it easier now than it's ever been?
I would say, if we're going to use the forbidden word, the algorithm.
Yeah.
Actually, I honestly think this is a great era for discoverability, only because we're working in a time now where algorithmically you are being shown what this website that you actively use thinks you'll like. And I can't tell you how many artists or people I've discovered just because of that fact, because I'm on YouTube all the time. I'm watching, my favorite creators. There's made for YouTube series that I watch, and I'm someone who is a very active user on YouTube. So I trust a lot of recommendations for them because they know exactly what I'm watching all the time, And I've discovered so many people with less than 1,000 subscribers, or maybe have 2 videos that they've ever made, but the topic or the song or whatever is so perfectly specific to what I'm into that I'll watch it. I don't care. It's like, this sounds interesting to me. And I think this is an era that if you're making good work, it doesn't matter if it's shorts or if it's music videos or if it's long form content. If you're making good work that resonates with people, it will resonate with people. I think previously, when I started on YouTube, which was back in 2017, the way that you became successful was you build an audience, they watch your videos, you become successful. Or at least that was the perception I had. But I'd say more than ever, it's easier to reach more people just because of all these new platforms too that we're working with that operate on a similar suggestion or recommendation based algorithm. So, that's not to say some people still very much get skunked by it and there's nothing you can do about trying to reach more people but not being able to. I would say a lot of the time it's just trying different things, trying things you find interesting, not reinventing the wheel. Even then, it's a tough landscape because of saturation. But I would say if you keep making things that are true to you as an artist, true to your interests and things you're genuinely about, you can grow and you can create community and find new people. The comments that I enjoy the most on videos are, oh my gosh, the recommendation's actually working for once. Those are the comments I love because it's like, okay, good. What I'm doing is enough to reach people who aren't actively subscribed to me, who don't know who I am maybe, or who are just fans of the source material that I'm working with. So that to me shows that I'm tapped in at least to like what my base is and should be. And then at that point, it's just kind of making diverse work to cast a net to where someone says, wow, this is really cool. What else do they have? Let me subscribe, So I think a lot of the time it's really just a lot of trial and error, but ultimately making things that are authentic to you.
Fascinating. And there's this new component in the last few years, vertical video as well.
Oh, yeah.
I get a lot of music just comes across my path on, say, Instagram Reels.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, musically speaking, there's the sort of slightly double-edged sword of like something's got to be able to grab you in about 5 seconds on Instagram Reels, which you would imagine tends to favour like very virtuosic, I don't know, jazz pianists or like a close harmony group who are doing something particularly kind of sparkly, something grabby. And I guess, if you were a muso, you might say, well, that's not representative of long form, music.
Yeah,
yeah. In terms of YouTube Shorts, in your, your principal pond, I would imagine. What's your level of kind of creator anxiety when it comes to like shorts and grabbiness of sections of even just small sections of your videos?
A lot of the time I've had to approach short form content very differently than I do music videos because I have a somewhat successful TikTok, and it's something that happened completely by accident, because I was using TikTok, I wasn't posting anything. I was just using it to send my friends memes, to be totally frank. So I don't know if it was a friend of mine. I think my friend suggested that I make some Keytar covers, just little 30-second, maybe solos or something on TikTok. I did not expect it to blow up like it did. And that to me is a little more of a specialized thing, because I'll make short form content to promote my longer form content, or promote like an album announcement or a show announcement, things that are different. I would say it's a very different kind of attention and a different kind of need for whatever that thing is.
You should have never doubted the power of the Keytar.
I should not. Well, you know what? It made me a believer. I'll tell you what. So, but it's like, of course I'd want to see someone playing Through the Fire and the Flames on Keytar. Of course I would want to see someone shredding, a classic rock solo on this instrument I've never seen before. Yeah, that's interesting. It makes sense to me. And it's funny because short form content, I know people have cameras dedicated for it. I'm using my cell phone with the built-in microphone, and those videos outperform my cinematic content in the same way by and large. It's wild.
This is what I'm being told. Yeah, that it's like you don't put up a screenshot, put up a photo of the screen with the thing on it, which is a very odd landscape we find ourselves in with these particular platforms.
I think a lot of it too is the audience is seeking realness. I've been told that word has been flying around, right? People are wanting something that feels authentic. And for whatever reason, a DSLR, a film camera, a professionally curated image feels inauthentic to the audience now. And that's fine. I mean, I disagree, but that's chill. If they want to see my slightly blurry front-facing camera for me to play a solo for them and they're into that, that's cool. I can do that too. It's a lot less effort, I would say. But, I'm still trying to hone the vertical video feeling myself, because of course it's not hard to do, but ultimately it's not where my creativity wants to be.
No.
So yeah, it's kind of a weird line.
What's your favourite video game or series for specifically rock and metal? Not in terms of your creative output, but in terms of the raw music in the game.
Guilty Gear Strive, 100%. Followed very closely by anything in the Persona series. I am a big fan of Persona. Dedicated a lot of time to both playing the games and creating work from the games. Both of those soundtracks are unbelievably good. Guilty Gear is all from the brain of Daisuke Ishiwatari, who I have had the pleasure to meet, which was incredible. Every single instrument in any Guilty Gear song is the hardest thing you've ever played.
The heart turns into stone, all this stuff from a bedtime story. Happy ending in just a sad short detour. Life is a journey, not a destination. Enjoy the ride with ups and downs.
There is no easy song from a Guilty Gear game. And I love that. Especially, it taps in to my classical roots. It taps into my need to challenge myself. I love it. I love working on the game soundtracks. I love trying to figure out, oh God, how am I going to do this one? That's always, whenever a new character drops and a new theme, my Twitter DMs are full, just being like, what are you going to do with this one? I'm like, that's a good question. But it's so fun. It's such a great challenge to do anything from that game in particular. I love doing it. My audience loves when I do it. So it's fun. It's a very fun one to do. Persona, in a similar vein, are challenging, but more so in the sense that I kind of want to see what I can interpret with it. That's definitely a less literal take, just in the sense of like, I want to try and invent how I would have done this soundtrack, because it's so close to the way I would write a lot of things.
Yes, because of course Lynn is the one of the female vocalist who sort of leads the charge on the Persona games, and a lot of the tracks are rock tracks. So female vocalist, rock tracks. that's well in your
in
wheelhouse.
my wheelhouse. Yeah, exactly. So it's fun to kind of interpret and make a few things heavier too. It's fun. It's fun to just really play around with all of the soundtracks from the Persona series. I'm a big fan.
You're taking your cue from the Persona creators themselves, because each of these games, the Japanese companies seem to be incredible at this, which is that creating something wildly, evocative and creative in the first place, Persona 5, Persona 4, Persona 3, and then that becomes like a base, a content base, and then you get the kind of expanded edition, and then you get the mobile game, and then you get the follow-up extra thing, and
the battle tactical version of
it. the tactical game years later, like 7 years later or something, with a soundtrack that does, some of it is brand new, some of it harkens back. So no wonder that you find these things kind of fertile, because the creators themselves are still riffing on their own, older material, as it were.
You can feel the passion in it. I mean, there's so many themes from Persona in particular that repeat completely. And there's callbacks to Shin Megami Tensei as well in a lot of the themes and motifs that you'll hear throughout the soundtracks. And there's something about that, I mean, you play a Persona game, and if you've played one before, you know what you're getting into. So the monsters are the same, the mechanics are the same, the music is similar. And that's kind of the draw. So I think Persona has done such a great job of establishing what to expect and then delivering such amazing characters and storylines in addition to this music that, in my case, moves me to tears. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing every time.
Right before your eyes, watch us multiply. Come to claim our rights. It's time as the power grows.
You hear these songs over and over again. So, I mean, that helps you, doesn't it? Because to a certain extent, you can assume that the Persona-loving members of your audience have heard these songs so many times repeated.
Very much, yeah.
And for a long playtime as well.
Yeah, there's something about it. I was thinking about this morning. By the time I even film a video or even think about it, I've spent between 20 to 30 hours with each of these songs, because that's just average, with recording and mixing and mastering and all that. That's about how much time I spend on each of these songs. So I know them pretty well. And the Persona stuff I don't get sick of ever. And it's such a delight to work on all the time. Atlas keeps me working. They've got plenty of soundtracks and lots for me to do. It's great.
And Metaphor Refantasio coming out this year.
I'm looking forward to that.
How do you pick on a given week or whatever? How do you pick which tracks to cover?
Honestly, it's most of the time what interests me. So it'll either be something that I'll just hear and then become possessed to do it until it's out of my head and then I feel free again. Most of the time, that is the way it goes. But a lot of the time, too, I cover what my friends like. So one of my friends is the biggest Final Fantasy 14 nerd in the world, and I love her tremendously. And she requested a while ago that I cover this dungeon theme, and I'd never done anything from 14. I played it for like 6 hours, and then I've never touched it again, and I will get back to it. I promise. This is not a triggering comment. I'm planning on getting back to it.
There's only time in life for one of those games in any one person's life,
Exactly. I will get to it. But I never would have touched Final Fantasy 14 OST if not for her. And then that was such a great entry point for me to appreciate Soken's work, the composer for 14 and then 16 and onward. But it was so cool to do that because a lot of the time, friends will say things, my peers will say things, and I just have to be in a place to listen and actually go and search the soundtrack or search the game and do it.
Yeah.
I never would have touched Persona 4 if not for my friend Dave. I'm putting him on blast right now because Persona 4 Golden was dropped for the PC just one day. They went, by the way, it's available on Steam now. And he bought me a copy because he said, you need to play this. And it's his fault. All of this is Dave's fault. because I loved it so much and I couldn't believe how good it was. And it's a lot of the time you just have to be in a place to listen and say, all right, sure, I'll give it a try. So most of the time it's stuff that's in my head or stuff that I've heard and feel possessed to do. The next one is if my friends request it and I just live to make my friends happy. Or lately as well, my patrons vote for one cover a month. So they can choose basically one of my videos that I end up doing, which is fun because I like to throw in some stuff I maybe normally wouldn't do. But if people are really into it, I've been surprised before by my patrons. So it's such a fun way to challenge myself and be like, oh, okay, let's figure this out, you know?
The trouble with video game soundtracks, especially video game soundtracks from the East, is they're getting bigger and bigger. Final Fantasy XIV must have, I don't know, 800 tracks or something. You know,
easily.
20 hours of music. Genshin Impact has like 900, I know for sure.
It's crazy.
Now, a lot of those are relatively short kind of instrumental pieces. Octopath Traveler 2 is a huge soundtrack. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, massive soundtrack. And then there's DLC on top. Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth is like a mega chonker. It's like the Leviathan of soundtracks. And there'll probably be more as well.
Yeah. Probably a whole new one for whatever the next part is.
When Metaphor drops, are you just going to like attack the soundtrack by yourself, or are you going to wait for tracks to emerge from the community?
You know, I mean, I'll probably play the game and then see what kind of grabs me from there. But a lot of the time too, I mean, something will stick out. Honestly, a few things have even been thrown at my way just because of like a meme that got started, like Specialist from Persona 4. I covered that entirely because of the meme. So you never know. It's like I'll hear something and maybe that'll be like, oh, that's fun. I like it. And then when I literally can't get it out of my head, I'm like, okay, we need to do this then. That's the catalyst. It's when it doesn't leave me that it needs to happen, usually. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, a lot of the time, if my friends will cover it, that might be enough for me to revisit and be like, okay, let's look at the track list. Let's see what's up.
Have you ever backed off a piece where you've just been like, yeah, this is going to work?
Yes. Several times, actually. I call that being in touch with myself because a lot of the time, a long time ago, I would just make something work just to do it. And it was so empty of a feeling. And there's been a few Guilty Gear tracks I have had to shelve, and I don't take that lightly because, like I said, when I'm doing those soundtracks, I know they're hard. I know it's going to be a lot of time changes or a really difficult drum part that I have to figure out. There's a lot of difficulty with some pieces in general, but it's a fine line between this is really tough, I'm going to figure it out, or this is really tough, I need to put it away. Because a lot of the time there's so much going on, right? I'm never just working on one thing. So usually I have the mental awareness now to take a break and be like, you know what? We're going to come back to this on maybe a different day when I don't have this other thing going on. But it happens. It definitely happens. There's a lot of stuff that I have to come back to months later or weeks later or whatever. I'll be out like for a run and then I'll figure it out. And I'll be like, oh my God, I need to get home. I got to figure this out. That's it.
Are you able to just like put a cover behind you? Like you've done the video, it's all finished, you press go on YouTube, you promote it a bit, and then it's just like, right, okay, then now it can leave your brain. Because you've done so many, how many actual single covers have you done at this point?
Oh.
Sorry.
Ballpark, probably... Oh, there's collabs too. Probably between 300 and 400.
Oh, that's a large number. That's a lot.
It's a lot. Yes, I am very much able to put things behind me. There's some stuff that I have made only for a recorded medium, will never be done live, never have intention of touching it again. It's more just to get it out there to, like I say, make it leave my consciousness and just enjoy it. You know, those are still things I enjoy to watch. And a lot of the time I'll watch it back and be like, I don't know how I did that. Thank God it's recorded. Otherwise I wouldn't believe it, you know?
Yes, it's true. Like work from years ago can kind of come back to surprise you. You're like, I did that?
Yeah.
That's the fun thing, I think, about actually getting into the habit of publishing creations on a regular basis, the part of the discipline of that, the reward is that you're able to kind of surprise your future self sometimes.
Very much. Pretty much always.
Adam Neely made a video about 8 Big Bang because he depped for one of their gigs, I think. And his sort of thesis was that he was reflecting on whether there's a video game music canon now that works a little bit like the Fate book, the cheat books of jazz players. Anyone who knows video game covers knows that the Legend of Zelda games, Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, that kind of thing, all interestingly Japanese titles, have been done a lot. You know, they've been reinterpreted on a harp and drum and bass and everything in between, probably Swanee whistle at some point. Someone's done Zelda on every possible, musical sound there is to make.
Oh, 100%.
How do you personally feel about the canon? Is it something you steer towards sometimes, steer away at other times?
It's an interesting topic because then we kind of circle back as well to talking about, the current landscape, at least in the YouTube world, right? There's a lot of covers out there. There's a lot of saturation. I absolutely agree. There are standards now. VGM standards absolutely exist. They're kind of the greatest hits. They're, the Don't Stop Believin', the Freebird, the Stairway of Heaven. Like we have them now. It's a thing. I really enjoy the 8-Bit Big Band. I know a few of the people involved and who've worked with them, and they're just brilliant, prolific musicians as well. And their interpretations of a lot of standards are so out of the box. They are so fresh that it doesn't feel like the song I've heard covered 50,000 times, right?
Yes.
There was a joke at VGM Con last year because it was Legend of Zelda themed. There was a joke that my friend Patrick was going around how many times he would hear the Song of Storms performed at VGM Con. And it was something ridiculous along the lines of 16 times that weekend in a 2-day period. And there's nothing wrong with standards. There's a reason they're loved and appreciated and covered so much. Personally, I like to do songs that I don't hear covered a million times. That's to say, I have covered, Final Fantasy VII. I've done Legend of Zelda. I've done Kirby and a lot of the other things that I'd say you would recognize. And especially since I perform live, I like to have some of those things sprinkled into the set so my audience immediately has familiarity and is excited about it. But personally, I would say my taste definitely leans toward, in a certain way, right? Things that aren't necessarily the standard tunes, the most covered greatest hits. Nothing against it whatsoever. I'd just say that's kind of my preference.
Yeah.
But of course, I have the Final Fantasy gene. Like we're all covering the same thing over and over again. But a lot of the time too, I benefit tremendously from the fact that my instrument itself is uncommon. So I could play the same thing that you've heard 500 times on Keytar, and it's more novel just on the fact that it is an uncommon instrument.
You favour counter-programming.
Yeah, a little bit.
That's got to be the way to go if you're trying to... Because you're established now.
Yeah.
If you're just starting out, for instance, that canon might be helpful to kind of get a few leg ups in terms of actually getting something finished, actually putting it online, and being able to judge it somewhat quality-wise against, Song of Storms on steel pans and Song of Storms, on the nose whistle or whatever it is.
No, but I also think too, because this is a conversation that comes up a lot in our community. There's a couple channels dedicated solely to covering basically uncovered or really obscure Windows games or really, really like unknown games, which is cool in and of itself. But of course, for search engine optimization, it's impossible. It's a nightmare.
It's the opposite end.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a dichotomy a little bit because you can have pieces that I've heard a million times where I could be like, I don't want to hear Storm Eagle covered one more time. I don't want to hear Lon Lon Ranch covered one more time, which is not true. I would actually listen to as many covers as possible of that song. But it's a little bit of both because the familiarity and the knowing aspect that I think comes with if you have an audience and they know the Legend of Zelda main theme and they don't know who you are, they don't know VGM, they're not aware that cover music exists. The chance of them clicking on a video of a song that they know or a game that they love is way higher than picking something that is an obscure B-side of, I mean, I'll take Persona 5, for example, one level where this song happens one time. If you haven't played the game, or if you're not a fan, or if you're not invested in the artist who's doing it, you probably won't watch that video. It's a little bit of the psychology between who your audience is in particular.
So you've got Guilty Gear Strive, you've got Persona, which are sort of driving you creatively, or those who have been your favourites to do so far. Do you find the fan base between different series is different? Do they have different group personalities? And does that tip you one way or another to lean towards some rather than others?
Yes, I would say every fandom does have its own little flavor. It's fun. Something I've been enjoying in my comment section, because I read all my comments, is people have a tendency to share anecdotes with me in the comments, which is really something that touches my heart. And I noticed this especially in retro games. I cover a lot of fighting games, particularly Street Fighter is one where I notice this a lot. People will share stories with me about a brother or someone they served in the military with, or a childhood friend growing up. They'll share these wonderful anecdotes about them playing Street Fighter with their friend, and this song reminds them of this beautiful memory that they shared together. And I just love that so much. It's such a testament to how powerful games and the music associated with games is in our lives, whether we know it or not. You know, it persuaded this random stranger on the internet to comment and share this memory with me. And I find that so beautiful, and I love seeing it. I love reading it. Please, people, keep leaving those comments. I love them so much. But it's funny because every fandom definitely has a style. Persona fandom, feral, always willing to comment, sharing everywhere. We love it. Love to see it. At least in my comment section. Guilty Gear, similar. I mean, everyone's so excited to hear a song because they're so difficult. I'd say there's a lot of passion from people just being excited that I did it or tried either way, you know, because there aren't a lot of covers of some things. And I think it's fun, especially if you're such a big fan of the game, and the fighting game community is always so vocal, which is awesome. It's so cool to see someone really like going for it and trying to make something evocative that feels like the energy of the game. That's always what I'm trying to do with a lot of the things, the works I'm doing. But yeah, I mean, even the Metroid fandom, I've been very close with the Metroid fandom for a few years. They're always so supportive, and they're sharing me in Discords and Facebook groups. And it's so cool just to feel like what I'm doing connects with people. And ultimately, that's something that I really want to stress to anyone who's watching, commenting, liking, supporting, even silently. You know, we're all individuals at the end of the day. Someone is reading what you're writing, whether it's the creator themselves or a moderator or whatever. So be nice. But also, it's a really beautiful way to connect with people. And ultimately, we're all fans of video games. We're all fans at the end of the day of whatever it is, like whatever about the process. So please share if you really feel moved by something and you're really excited about it, or it just made you happy, made your day. Share that with that creator, because I can't tell you how many comments I get from my community because I expressed that I want them to be vocal about it. And it makes my day. It makes working on these songs for so long worth it. Every time.
Oh, that's really, really lovely. It must be nice to get those little nuggets of positivity.
It is.
Your persona on your channel, very high energy, very intense, and you can't fail but notice Japan seems to just have this ginormous cultural impact, like outsized cultural impact, both with the video games it puts out. You know, Capcom's on a hot streak at the moment, for instance, and Nintendo's Nintendo. But in terms of video game music as well, is it just a natural tie-up between you and games from Japan in terms of that energy, that earnestness?
I would say so.
Does anything ever occur to you about like American-made games or European-made games or games from elsewhere? Do you ever think like, oh, they could have done a better job with this soundtrack, or where are the great energetic soundtracks from elsewhere in the world?
Sure. I mean, I'd say just the nature of role-playing games that I love happen to be produced in Japan. I think it's a happy accident. I wouldn't say necessarily it's a target for me, because I also love indie games. I love Supergiant games. I'm a big fan of Hades and Bastion and Transistor, and a lot of those games I've covered a few of their works in the past as well. But I do think Japan, it's just such a signature to it. They're so in tune with energetic games and rhythm games and a lot of things that make you feel excited. And I think ultimately, too, if I may nerd out for a little bit, there's a lot of production that leans that way. They're very good at knowing exactly what synthesizers, what vocal production, what electronic drum kit sounds to amplify whatever they're doing.
Yes.
We've got a lot of four to the floor on a lot of fight themes, which already just kind of simulates excitement in a heartbeat and gets your audience and listener really excited about it. There's so many production tricks to just really driving the point home, regardless of the fact that the works are phenomenal. There's so many fun tricks to it as well. But I would say, like, something I enjoy so much about Japanese soundtracks that I've been able to work around and hear is their orchestration. Something I really love about Octopath Traveler, for instance, is that it is full symphonic rock. They're full orchestra in conjunction with rock instrumentation, in conjunction with some EDM in there. I mean, it's so well done. It's so well crafted. And I think that's really cool. And I think Square Enix is definitely leaning in that direction in all their works. I think Japan always has had just such a grand appreciation for music and musicianship. Even just jazz still is so appreciated in Japan, and it never became a subgenre for a lot of people. Traditional music is so appreciated in Japan. Pop music is so appreciated. They just have culturally such a respect for musicianship and live music as well. And I do think that having that sort of appreciation for so long has funneled into just the super production of getting the right musicians, having established sound teams for publishers. That works well. I mean, having composers and musicians that always work together. The Splatoon soundtrack is an excellent example. I've seen some of their studio sessions on YouTube. One of the best things to watch, because these people are so good. They're so locked in 100% of the time. But that's how we create these sounds and associations, working with the same composers, working with the same musicians, having those people like a wrecking crew, if you will, their signature sound.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said for that. As much as, I've been a studio musician for a long time, people learn and recognize, oh, that's that player on that record. Oh, that you can hear their vocal as the backup. You learn and associate. I don't think we necessarily have that as much out here in the West, at least.
My impression, again, generalization, is that in the West, it's video games are scored by freelancers for the most part, working on their own with sound libraries, and if they have a budget for live recording, they'll go in and do an orchestra for like a couple of days and then use sound libraries for the rest of it. And it's a lonely life potentially for a composer working on a Western game. I mean, even Darren Korb, who is in-house at Supergiant, although he has lots of other roles there, including
voice actor as well.
Yes, audio director, voice actor, all of that jazz. I mean, he's still on Hades 1, at least, as far as I'm aware. I did interview him. It's still him playing drums, him playing guitar. He's collaborating with vocalists. He doesn't have a house band. Presumably back then he couldn't afford a house band. I expect they probably can now, but it's just a completely different approach, isn't it? Maybe some of that needs to get exported at some point.
I would say so.
Yeah. Like a house band. I don't know which Western studio kind of would suit it, really, that kind of puts out games consistently enough to need a jazz fusion core session squad.
Well, maybe we could have a new one,
Yeah, well, there you go. That's what you should be striving for. No pun intended. So you have to give a lot of energy in these performances. And one thing I noticed, the visual production of these videos. Can you talk a little bit about how you came by that style? Was it just hard fought, like over and over again, keep improving it, getting lights in, that kind of thing?
Basically, my channel shifted for the better when my boyfriend Peter went to film school. That was a very big shift for us. He used to edit my videos all the time, and he's trained in 3D animation and just honestly a savant at anything he does. But it definitely was a big shift for us, learning how to light, learning how to get creative with lighting and cinematography. Cinematography has always been something that's interested me, but I never knew what I needed to try and execute those ideas. And after the two of us just deep diving into learning about cameras and lights, things kind of naturally were acquired into our studio. But it's just the two of us. Everything is in his parents' garage. We just set up a studio there and move all the furniture when it's time to record, and that's what we do. We just did it last night, so it's, it's fresh in my mind. But a lot of it's being creative, learning the rules of cinematography and filmmaking to break them, to know how to make the adjustments that we want to try and execute things. I learned that I really like the look of a handheld video, and we did that for a while, but it became too much work for Peter to always be following me around, and too much risk and variance to have to do more takes than we need to. So we're tripod now, but we created a artificial shake basically that we filmed ourselves. So the camera still feels like it has a handheld quality or a more organic quality to it. It's little tricks. It's playing with frame rates. It's filming in slow motion and speeding up later. There's a lot of little things that you learn over the course of time and experiment with and get creative with. I'm not afraid to go outside, unlike some gamers. I touch grass and I go outside, but it's just not being afraid to try something new, while at the same time knowing that we can do a certain lighting setup and I know I'm going to like the way it looks. Yeah, creating presets, creating new ways to try the same thing. It's fun. I've been doing a lot of the editing now, unless we have visual effects, he'll handle that. But it's a process. I have learned too much about cameras and memory cards and lights, but it's a great thing to know because I feel much more self-sufficient now that I can run a studio myself.
It's fascinating. It sounds like you've put so much thought and effort into it. You've got the thumbnails and written copy and Patreon and Twitch and just on and on and on, all these platforms in different aspects to handle. It is incredibly impressive.
Thank you. I work very hard.
I can tell. Do you feel like you're going to evolve at some point? Is there something you'd like to evolve towards ideally?
I'm always thinking forward, so it's a question I ask myself every other day. Honestly, production-wise, I'm very happy with where things are. We're working on trying to kind of get even more creative with lighting and some automation. So learning DMX programming and having a little bit more engaging interactive lighting with whatever I'm doing. So pretty much I'm just trying to create like a Hollywood set in our garage. The beautiful thing about this world we're in now is that the sky's the limit. I've been so fortunate to work with Square Enix twice. I've worked with Arc Systems Works a few times. I've worked with Genshin Impact, and I want to keep working with game companies. I want to be in games. I want to be known as an entity and be associated with video games. I'd love to work with Atlas, Sega, please call me.
Wouldn't we all?
I know. But it's a thing that my dreams are huge. I want to build this channel to be very successful, to foster a community, to grow a community even more than we have already. I'm so proud of the work that my community has done, and we're just attracting positivity and people who are genuinely so excited about games and the music in games. It's such a cool place to be. I would say my goal pretty much today and always is just to keep inspiring people to feel like they have a place and they have a community within the community itself. I want to inspire more women to do this because pretty much on most of the bills I'm ever booked on, I'm the only woman or the second woman on the bill, and that's not okay to me because there are so many women that are so talented that deserve an opportunity to shine and to be in the same spotlight that I know they deserve. And so just even making a lot of people upset by me just being a woman in the scene, that's great too. That's progress either way. I do what I can, it's my punk rock attitude. And I want people to feel like no matter what they think of their work or whatever they bring to the table, they have a place. And I always want to just enforce that and make people feel like their work matters and they deserve to be heard.
That's so awesome. I really love that. And of all the composers, all the games that are in the future coming up, we assume there's a Persona 6 or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Is it Persona 6, the game, the soundtrack you're looking forward to most? Or is there a particular composer who you think stands, above others and that you just cannot wait to hear what their next original work is?
Honestly, probably Persona 6, because Persona 3 Reload, which everyone should play, it is a masterpiece.
I'm tempted.
It is phenomenal. That game's soundtrack was so impressive to me. And Shoji Meguro, the Atlas sound team, whoever is associated in Persona 6, I will be first in line. I love it so much. It's a series I really feel so strongly for, and I have such faith, given the track record of the series, given the sound team and the impressive musicianship and arrangement that I've heard on every soundtrack of theirs thus far. It's something that I just heavily anticipate and would love to be involved with. But it's something I feel so excited anytime I hear Persona mentioned at all. I would say, their team is so locked in with exactly the vision of the franchise. Final Fantasy, of course, always. That's just the fibers of my being. But yeah, I'd say Persona is just always my top.
Few more tricks up my sleeve. It's way too late for you to leave now. Get ready. Disturbing the beast. Look into my eyes. Now tell me the things you're laughing about behind my back. The tenacity I hold, it's hard to break down. It's too late for apologies. It's going down.
Okay, we're going to do Done in 60 Seconds now. We're going to take just a minute to recommend something to each other. It's my turn to go first. Okay, so today's track from me is Welcome to Fantasyland by Yu Peng Chen, the composer from the Genshin Impact game, which is obviously a huge worldwide smash hit, the free-to-play game. He's a Chinese composer, and this is a solo album. I believe he stopped work on Genshin and sort of moved on now. He's produced a extremely lush and beautiful sounding solo album that is still in the same kind of instrumental, orchestral, lush vein as a lot of his Genshin work. The interesting thing about the album, though, it is incredibly beautiful. It's incredibly lovely to listen to. It is also very familiar. If you like Studio Ghibli, if you like John Williams scores, you're going to swear you've heard some of these melodies. So I wonder if people can particularly spot what I might be alluding to there with this particular piece. But otherwise, it's a very lovely album.
Definitely sounds similar to a certain fantasy film series. Although, to be fair, as the song goes on, it just gets further and further away from that. I think it's a nice track. People love his music, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
They are absolutely enamored by it. It's wild.
Yeah, I hope it does well. He's obviously built himself an audience and is now trying to, in the best way possible, capitalise on that and build himself a career beyond Genshin.
Right. Time to split. because we are talking about the soundtrack for Time Splitters 2. Why am I listening to this 20 years or so after its release? It's because the original trilogy just dropped on PlayStation Plus, and I just kept seeing music videos popping up like on my Twitter, like, do you know those videos where people put that like bopping cat or like another like meme and then put it over top of the music? And it was just like listening back to the Time Splitters 2 music. The music in this game is really incredible. There is one track in particular composed by Graham Norgate called Scrapyard, which is just obnoxiously heavy.
I mean, Matt, it's not my usual type of listen, I must say, but it is indeed very heavy. These noughties vibes are just going around at the moment, I think. You know, anything kind of noughties, that starts to feel nostalgic, and this does take me back. And looking at the cover art of Time Splitters 2, I am tempted to check it out on PlayStation Plus Premium. I think it is on the. I assume it's on.
Have you never played the games before?
Oh yeah. I played Time Splitters 2 before. Yeah. I used to like it a lot. Yeah.
So good.
Because I never had an N64, so I did enjoy GoldenEye, but around other people's houses. I did have a PS2, but I never owned a Time Splitters game, so I'm an appreciator of Time Splitters 2. I might have completed the campaign, I think, but it was a long time ago, so yeah, good stuff. Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for this week on the GXM podcast. Thanks so much for joining us as we explore the intersection between video games and music. Please be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on your podcast service of choice, especially Apple Podcasts, please. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at GXM Podcast. I promise, I think we're all sensing the impending something of X / Twitter, so Threads. Hopefully going to be spending a bit more time on Threads if we possibly can, building that up. I'm at T Quillfeldt on Twitter and Threads. That's TQILLFELDT. Matt is at Mat Ombler on X. And Matt, are you on Threads? Are you haunting there yet?
No, I think the less social media for me at the moment, the better. Honestly, I'm just a LinkedIn bro now. I think LinkedIn is fantastic. I love it.
You are a LinkedIn bro. Okay, go and hook up with Matt on LinkedIn.
Let's network. Thanks for connecting.
Oh, God. If you've got any feedback, hit us up at gxmpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks to 8 Beats Radio for amplifying this. It was produced by both of us, edited by me, music's by Zach Foster, and show art is by Joshua Klein.